Bandit Sam DeStefano was so bloodthirsty and inadequate that he was refused to be accepted into a mafia family, where inadequacy and cruelty are mandatory qualities when applying for a job. He worked for the Chicago affiliate, a crime ring led by Al Capone in the 1920s. DeStefano was called the Mad Hatter, the clown of the underworld. He was considered crazy and even a Satanist. His henchmen allegedly watched as Mad Sam prayed to the devil in difficult times, and then rolled on the floor, foaming at the mouth and shouting, "I am your servant. Command me." Be that as it may, DeStefano kept his mind on making money. In the early 1930s, Sam, then in his early 20s, successfully robbed a bank. With the stolen money, he bought a house with 24 apartments and rented them out. True, almost 20 years passed from robbery to purchase, most of which he spent in prison, including for bank robbery. He spent most of his income on oiling the right people, policemen, judges, politicians, and at the same time, he did not stop criminal activity, which also brought him income. DeStefano acquired the necessary connections and soon there was no problem in Chicago that he could not solve. The cops knew DeStefano's rates by heart: $1,500 for assault and battery, $800 for theft. That is, if they caught a robber, they didn't even go to the police station, but drove the criminal to DeStefano's house, where they received their $800 and then pretended not to see anything. DeStefano was always welcome in court, too. Sam could pay bail for some petty mobster he came across, bribe the prosecutor, once, for $20,000 from the Mad Hatter, a man whose guilt in the murder was proven, received an acquittal. Mad Sam has always been in partnership with the Mafia. He was useful and beneficial to the Dons, but they were still afraid to accept him into the family. The primary task of the Don is to pacify the scumbags included in the family, thus keeping the family from falling apart. With getting into Sam's family, this task became impossible. With one hand he smeared the bandits, with the other hand he sponsored them. If a gang needed money to rob a bank, they went to DeStefano. In the late 1950s, Sam was the biggest pawnbroker in Chicago. Both influential people and petty robbers came to him. Usually the bandit gave money at 20 to 25%, and he loved it when the money was not returned to him. It was not difficult for him to find a borrower with his connections, but what a pleasure it was for him to knock out debts. There were legends about the cruelty of the Rishola of the underworld. He once murdered his own brother Michael in cold blood when the boss hinted to him that his brother's addiction to drugs would sooner or later force him to turn in his criminal partners. For those who could not repay a debt, DeStefano had a torture dungeon, and once DeStefano was robbed of $25,000 by his own collector, Peter Cappelletti. The thief who stole from the thief was caught and beaten for several days and mocked him in every possible way in the basement of the restaurant. DeStefano then invited his bandit friends, some influential people in Chicago, and Cappelletti's wife to a party at this restaurant. At the end of the evening, the Hatter made a speech about how low Cappelletti had acted and what amazing generosity DeStefano himself had shown in not killing him. Finally, the hero of the occasion, beaten and stripped naked, was carried out into the hall and thrown on the table in front of his wife, whom DeStefano forced to immediately return $25,000. Some sources say that other members of the Cappelletti Seven were also present at the table, whom DeStefano ordered to urinate on the battered collector. In the late 1950s, the FBI tried to recruit Mad Sam. FBI Director Hoover ordered to look for gangsters. He is ready to work as informers in exchange for a pardon. Agents came to his home and said they had evidence linking him to the murder. Sam called his wife and 3 children. When the family gathered, he began to yell at them. "These 2 gentlemen are FBI agents. They accuse me of murder. I cry to God in heaven, Lord, if I am guilty, come down to earth and answer yours, and yours eyes." At the same time, he poked in the faces of his wife and children. The FBI agents were amazed at DeStefano's inadequacy, but for some time they did not stop trying to convince him of cooperation with the government. The agent who worked with him made the following portrait of the criminal. Mad Sam DeStefano is the most brutal liquidator and torturer in the history of Chicago. He was an arrogant and swaggering destroyer of the worst order, responsible for dozens of liquidations, almost all of which were carried out by his own hands. In addition, the offender suffered from narcissism. There were mirrors everywhere in his mansion. He devoted his free time to looking at himself in the mirror. And DeStefano also had presidential ambitions and was very sorry that the old prison term prevented him from running. In 1963, DeStefano, his brother Mario and 2 mafiosi liquidated a man. After 10 years, one of the mafiosi became an informant and told about that murder, and the rest of the killers were also arrested. Mad Sam at the trial behaved in the usual manner, like a jester who has lost his mind. He refused a lawyer, came to the meeting in pajamas or was brought on a stretcher. Mario and another colleague in the murder realized that with Sam they would not see leniency from the court, so they killed the 63-year-old in 1973. Killed without bullying and long preludes. They just shot him twice in the garage of his house and left him to bleed. Such is the fate of the criminal. Thank you for your attention.